Yo, what's up again? This is Trav. That's Bias.
So
And as you already know, the Sports Bag Bros podcast is back at you. This time, there aren't any glitches. Yesterday, there weren't any glitches. Before that, there were some
we're
glitches.
back, baby.
We're back, though. We're doing it hard. This is our weekend, our Friday. So this is Thursday. We do it 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday. So you can look us up anytime. It's on video. So even on Sunday, you can catch us if you want to. This is episode number 44. We're getting into sports. You did not even get an intro. You don't deserve an intro because you're not interacting with us the way you should.
Get to it.
Come on, get to it, man. We have some things to offer. Bring something to the table. Let's have the conversation because the conversation right now starts college football. It's finally.
Wait. I got something to say, remember?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what?
My hit list yesterday, I totally jumped the gun. Apologies to Enos Cantor. The headline was correct, but after reading more about it, he would agree with what I said, just not about him. So he was saying it to make a point of how ridiculous things are, and that was what he said. I could identify as a woman and play in the WNBA and dominate, and I saw that as ridiculous, and that's what he was trying to convey for what's going on in our society. So my bad, Enos. But I did preface it saying I didn't know if you had said it, but that's my bad. Again, I apologize. I didn't have all the facts, but I stand by what I said in regards to men competing against women
Absolutely.
and all of that stuff. So apologies to Enos Cantor, but not apologizing for anything else I said, the sentiment or the message I was conveying.
Yeah, but there is definitely nothing to apologize for with that because this is absolutely ridiculous. A lot of these times you have these men who weren't ranked anywhere when they were men. Now, all of a sudden, because they have so many physical advantages, they're going into the women's realm and taking over there. Not only in that, they're dominating. And I remember I was watching a video just a couple of weeks ago where there was a rugby player, a male, just absolutely dominating women. And the coach of the team wasn't letting the interviewer talk to the man about what was going on. They acted like they were accepting of it, and it's taking away from the women for him being as dominant. And I think there was a story about him hitting one of the women, and some observers said they've never seen, or people on the team, off the record, I guess, they've never seen anyone get hit like that before. You shouldn't, because a man should not be hitting a woman like that in a sports atmosphere anyway. But this is what we have right now. And until someone gets hurt seriously, and I think it may be a couple of someone's has to get hurt for someone to finally put their foot down and say, this is ridiculous. How can we can see it's ridiculous, but there are millions who think this is something that should be accepted?
I don't understand it. I could never be a part of that. Like if I was coaching some sport and I saw that, I'd be like, I'm done. I'm not having nothing to do with this. I'm out. Peace. I would not. It's one thing for girls to play Pop Warner football with boys at a young age. Props to them. If that's what they want to do, by all means, let them do it. But if there was a girls Pop Warner league and a boy wasn't very good with the boys and he wanted to go play with the girls, nah, that cannot happen. No, man, you got to work and get better, kid.
That's the advice they should have gotten when they were young. That way they wouldn't feel so excluded and diminished when they're older and doing these things against women. I was talking about, like we did yesterday, talked about Keith Thurman and probably Clarissa Shields getting together more in jest, not necessarily reality. I mean, something in me might have want to seen it realistically, but come on, man. It's just not going to happen. He loses every way you look at it. If he knocks her out, so what, you're supposed to do it. Now you're a woman beater and it's on your record. And if she beats you, you know how that's going to go down. I mean, especially if she dazes him or something like that. But yeah, it should not be like that in any capacity. Yeah, Clarissa Shields could beat a regular man out there who's not practicing boxing, who's not a professional or even a high-end amateur. She could probably beat him and knock him out. But when it comes down to the top guys, even though Keith Thurman hasn't fought in so long, he's still one of the top guys, and he would be more than she could handle, and that would be a problem. And unfortunately, there are feminists out there who believe that it's legitimate that she does have a chance or that she would outright beat him. The same way you had those people thinking that Ronda Rousey would beat Floyd Mayweather.
That's insane. I mean, they had the the historic game back in the day, Billie Jean King against the dude I can't remember his name,
Bobby Riggs.
Bobby Riggs. Yeah, but you don't play boxing. It's not.
No,
It's not the
no,
same as a tennis
we know
match.
that. Yeah,
Let's
that's
move on, man. Let's move on.
yeah.
Let's get
Let's
into
move
the
on
show.
because we're getting into the rabbit hole of absurdity with that one. So let's get down to the main topic, which we started with to begin the show. College football is back on the set. We're talking about games starting next week, so it's already here, even before the NFL season, as it already happens. The NFL is in the preseason, but college football. Reese Davis of ESPN doesn't have Georgia as his number one team as the rankings have come out, and the consensus has it, Georgia's number one, Michigan's number two, Ohio State three, and Alabama four. We talked about yesterday how Alabama claims they're being disrespected because they're not number four. Regardless of all the losses they've had, they're still complaining about we shouldn't be number four. We should be number one. When they lost 2 games last year, and well, they lost players from that team, including their number one pick overall, Bryce Young at quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would be upset about this. Reese Davis is one person. Is he going to decide who's going to the playoffs? Later this year. I don't think it's a big deal. Uh, people are just they're looking to get triggered nowadays.
Yeah.
People are a lot more sensitive nowadays. So he has you number two instead of number one. Maybe he has valid reasons. Maybe he doesn't believe in your quarterback. I mean, if you don't have a quarterback, it's going to be you might hit some rough spots. But in the grand scheme of things, does it matter? Who cares?
Well, as I've seen it, and people talk about these things as the season gets closer, they want to break things down. They're a little antsy. They want football back. They don't care how they get it. High school football starting here in Florida next week. College football, like I said, starting. The NFL preseason's already started. This is a football nation. But with Reese Davis, he does carry some clout because he is an ESPN guy. In fact, he's one of the guys who stayed. So apparently he's not someone they wanted to lay off. So he has some credibility there. But he took Michigan as number one. And initially on the surface, especially being here in the Southeastern Conference, the SEC, we already know how people outside of it feel about it. And we know how people in the SEC feel about it. But I don't think there's that much of a surprise when you look at how it could really go. I mean, Georgia is number one based on what? They've lost so many players just not only last season, but over the last 2 seasons. In 2022, they had 15 players go to the NFL draft. 2023, they had 10 more players, 25 players go to the NFL draft, including in 2022, they had 5 first rounders, all defensive players. We know defense wins championships. We've seen it in college and pro. So I can see why with the losses of those types of players, even though they're like Alabama, even though they're like Ohio State, they reload, there's still going to be a drop-off. You have a quarterback who has not started in SEC play. I mean, he's gotten some playing time with Carson Beck playing for Georgia. But Stetson Bennett, the backup, the 2-time champion for Georgia, is the one who had led them. They've lost all of these players. Michigan, on the other hand, I mean, just look at it. It's the Big Ten, first of all. We know the Big Ten runs the ball. Their quarterbacks are solid most times, but we don't necessarily look at the quarterbacks there the way we look at it out in the West or even in the South. But they do have solid quarterbacks. J.J. McCarthy, if you watch them play, this is someone you have to watch play. You can't just look at his stats and say this is why this guy is good or the reason why he isn't good. He had 22 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He didn't start this season. I mean, he went back and forth with Kate McNamara, who, by the way, stayed in the Big Ten, is now with Iowa. But he runs the ball well, and he does it really well. And, he threw the ball. The most he threw it last year was 34 times. He did it against TCU, and we saw what kind of a barn-burner game that was. He's a quality quarterback. He went from just being an athlete to being a quality quarterback, at least on the college level. I think if he goes to the NFL, he's Julian Edelman. Now, the way Edelman was with Kent State, the best athlete on the field in the MAC as a quarterback, but you could use him in the NFL as a receiver. I think that's what he's going to be. But if you break down just what Michigan has, everyone on the offensive line is a senior. That matters. Not only do they have those guys who are seniors who know the system, the 2 guys who just came in through transfers, not the usual transfer portal, but they came in as grad transfers. I mean, you have Ladarius Henderson came from Arizona State, another defection from the Pac-12, the Big Ten, offensive lineman, was voted the captain of his team at Arizona State. And then you have Nugent. You have Blake Nugent, who came from Stanford, another guy who was looked at and called captain of his team. 990 plus snaps, offensive snaps at the passing situations, only give up 4 sacks. Henderson only give up 2 sacks and just over 600 snaps doing the same. You have a very solid line right there with Michigan. I mean, so I look at it in depth saying, oh, crap, Michigan actually could be, in fact, out of the 4 teams, they're the only ones who bring their quarterback back. So why not be number 1?
Well, I know you pretty much said it all. But while you were talking, I was thinking, wasn't it just a couple years ago Michigan was struggling?
Yeah.
And Harbaugh, there was question if he was going to still be around. But they turned the corner, and maybe Reese Davis feels they're at that point where it's time for them to take the next step. And as you mentioned, the graduate players, the seniors on the offensive line,
yeah,
they have a lot of experience, and he could very well be right. We'll just have to wait and see. But I've been saying a lot. Preseason rankings don't mean much.
Exactly.
If you're 1 through 5, you win your games, you're not going anywhere. You're going to still be at the top. Where it makes a difference is if you're out of the top 25 or maybe in the bottom 10, it's hard for you to jump into the top 5. But if you're already there, I mean, what's the difference? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who cares?
It really doesn't. But I was just thinking with Reese Davis saying what he did initially, I was like, man, another one of those guys. But no, when I looked at it and broke it down and kind of looked at the roster, this is what they have. The continuity you need. I mean, the offensive line has to have continuity, even though new guys are coming in. Look at the character of these new guys coming in. Both were designated captains on their respective teams at Arizona State and Stanford. That means they know what their mission is coming in. They don't have to be hogs. They don't got to be the man. They just know why they transferred, and so they're here to solidify an offensive line who could really need them. And now McCarthy going into another season, full season as a starter. Blake Corum as the running back. I mean, he was phenomenal last year into the injury, and he's trying to come back nice and easy. And his running backs coach, Mike Hart, he's a Michigan legend. In fact, to this day, still the leading rusher in Michigan history with 5,040 yards. And he's a native New Yorker, by the way. But yeah, man, this Michigan team, I better keep a better eye on them, even though I keep an eye on them. It's not just SEC country right now. The Big Ten may have something to say big time when it's all said and done. So yeah,
they'll have an opportunity. I just want to say, because I thought about it. When I say who cares, I mean I don't care. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there who care, but I should just say I don't care.
Oh, because there are a lot of college football fans who care because
I'm a college football fan. It just I don't see it as a big deal. So
but,
I don't care.
You said it already, man. People
if my team was ranked number 4, number 5, I'm like, all right, well, we'll see at the end of the season.
People look to
perfect example. People always gonna say, oh, he always talks about Nebraska. Well, this example is Nebraska. They went to the Orange Bowl. They beat Miami in the Orange Bowl to win the championship. And then the next year, they weren't number 1. And I wasn't crying about it. I was like, we'll just see what happens.
And
they just dominated everybody. And when it came at the end of the season, there was no doubt who number 1 was.
Yeah, so they just ransacked Florida. That game there was a dominant performance. I tell you what, I picked Florida in that game. I'm no Gator fan. Anyone who knows me knows that much. And I still picked the Gators to beat them. I took just the Florida guys are that good. They got ran out of the freaking – they weren't even in the gym. They still got ran out of the gym.
one of my favorite memories, other than the game itself, were some of the players after the game at midfield doing the choo-choo dance.
Yeah, see, I didn't see that.
Nebraska players. I mean, because they had, they were talking about the Florida Fun and Gun and all of that. The old ball coach Spurrier, you had that high-powered offense, and it was, but 24 points wasn't enough. You forgot to bring your defense.
Exactly that, and then Tommy Frazier, a Floridian, just running through his home state's team like it was like melted butter, knife through melted butter, just running through him. But yeah, man, I mean, that Nebraska team was an excellent team, one of the top teams of all time. If you want to talk about just top teams and Nebraska teams from the past, 1971 team, but that team, I believe, 95 and 96.
I'm just using them as an example that it doesn't matter where you start; it's where you finish.
Yeah, it is. It does. I mean, TCU, same, didn't get to the championship game, but got themselves into the championship game. I mean, they didn't win the championship, got themselves into the championship game. But once again, I think Michigan does have a real right. Now, when you think about it and kind of put your biases to the side, I mean, I'm not even an SEC person, and my team is not in the SEC, but I admire the ball they play because I get the chance to see a lot of the athletes just looking a lot better than others. But anyways, Michigan has a legitimate case. And another team that may have somewhat of a case, something has to happen. The team that's kind of been in the news from the very beginning since Coach Prime showed up, Colorado. Now they'll be playing their first game against TCU, I think on September 2nd. After that, they're playing against your team, Nebraska. But as it stands right now, there was a fight in camp. Like fights happen. We see them in the NFL, and it happens in college. They got to start somewhere. And guys are battling each other. And Deion Sanders, instead of wanting to break it up, he was upset at his team for not having more players join the fight. He saw too many peacemakers trying to get guys back to the right side of the right corner. What does this say about Deion? Is he starting somewhat of a toxic culture?
It seems that way. He says he doesn't care about culture. He just wants kids to play hard. So he's sticking to that, I guess. But if you can't get along with the guy next to you, there's going to be some selfish play. Linebackers need to work together. DBs need to work together. When it comes to tackling, if I'm selfish going after the guy and there's a guy there, instead of boxing them in and working together to box them in, he might juke me, go around me, and I might be in the other guy's way.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that toxic culture, but hey, we just got to see how it goes. I mean, Prime, he did a hell of a job at HBCU. He got his opportunity at Colorado, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, just going by the things he's saying, I'm hoping that he also remembers during all of this stuff that he's saying and doing that there is a such thing as cameras and recorders. And the thing you're saying now, I want my guys to be fighters. I don't want them helping each other. I want them to go out there and kind of, in a team setting, they want them to fight for one another. You know what I mean? The offense and defense is having their fight out there. I don't want people just breaking it up. I want to see other people getting into the fight. Well, we've seen
examples. I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
Exactly. That's what I'm having a problem with because we've seen examples of that in the past. We've seen Miami do that against FAU. We've seen other teams and how nasty it's gotten. We've seen Notre Dame. We've seen Miami. Other teams from the past, that gotten together when it got a little bit too rough in there, and it wasn't a good look. You got ejections and all the other crap. I know he's trying to build a culture where you have a bunch of feisty people. He has about 50 people who have transferred, more than that have transferred to Colorado. I think 71 went into the transfer portal out of Colorado after the spring game. And, there's a lot he has to live up to. Even though Colorado hasn't done anything in literally decades, he has a lot to live up to just because he's Coach Prime. And I don't think it's based on the success he's had at an HBCU because let's call it what it is. A lot of people outside of HBCUs don't think that's quality football anyway. I've covered HBCUs for years, literally years, decades. And I've seen these types of players, and the talent could be better. Just put it that way. But the team he coached, they only lost one game, but they never won a Celebration Bowl. They were never crowned HBCU champs. And that's what's on his mind. He lost even on that level. So he can lose on this level where things are a little bit more balanced when you're getting the same talent as the other great coach. And we'll find out how great a coach is.
So here's what I'm thinking about. What was the fight over? And who was fighting? And then who was breaking it up? Now, if it's one of the leaders on the team breaking it up, well, then I'm good with that. The leader's like, hey, cut that shit out. We're one team. We got to get along. But if one of the leaders is starting the fight and then people don't have his back, well, now that's a problem because that's your leader and nobody has his back.
And I think that did have a play in it. I think there was something about that in there when they were saying that's one of your top players. I think it was a play in which one of the running backs got into the end zone during a goal line drill. And then someone who got upset that he didn't give him a tackle way after the play just flung him to the ground. And he's like, yo, that's one of your top players. And you letting people, even if it's your teammate, you letting him just do what he wants. And that's when the ruckus started. But then he saw from afar, from the coaches got involved and whatnot, but he saw.
He was up on that 100-foot stand with the binoculars, probably.
The binoculars and the coaches. We know Coach Prime ain't working.
And the whistle.
Days. And he didn't see, he said he saw people walking from the fight instead of going to the fight. So he wants to build a culture where people are fighting for each other or just fighting, period. He wants a fighter out there. He wants a scrappy club. And I think there's a fine line of wanting a scrappy club and coming across as thugs in the game against another team.
If his teammates fighting, they're not fighting for each other. They're fighting with each other.
With each other.
I don't know.
I have a problem thinking that he wants them all to fight, regardless of who started or who ended it. If there's a fight, he wants them all to be involved in that fight. And that's the culture I'm kind of sort of worried about if that's what he's trying to build. Because when you're talking about teams that aren't your teammates, people in other venues, you're on the road, you get into a fight like that. You're going to be looked at as a toxic coach, and then you know how things are these days. You're going to be looked at as like the Miami of the 1980s with the criminals versus convicts kind of team. And I don't think you want that identity. If your team could just back up what they're doing on the football fields and it translates into wins, then that's a lot better than just being known as a tough, scrappy team with 3 wins to show for it.
Yeah, I had something in mind, but I lost it. I forgot. Just move on.
Yeah, well, keeping with college football, we're going all over the country somewhat. I typically talk about the SEC, but hell, the Big Ten and SEC seem to be the only conferences that have a lot going on. The ACC is not even making that much noise, and they have Florida State and Clemson. But we do have a starting quarterback in Auburn as Hugh Freeze, the new coach at Auburn, has anointed Peyton Thorne as the quarterback. Thorne as the quarterback, former Michigan State quarterback. Now with Auburn, he anointed him as the number 1 quarterback for Auburn. We'll see how that goes down because Auburn was horrible last season, 5-7. I believe they only won 2 games in the SEC. That's bad for Auburn standards, especially when you know Alabama is your rival. You're going back and forth with them. Georgia, the oldest rival in the South, is another team you're going to have to compete against at some point. And you at least want to have someone out there who can get the ball to your receivers and control your offense and not look as bad as you've been looking.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's big news. Auburn has a long way to go to improve, and we'll see if he's the man to help them get there.
Well, he went 16-10 at Michigan State, and the reason why it may be a bigger deal than anything is because of Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze, remember, I don't know if you do remember, he was at Ole Miss. And Ole Miss, we were talking about just yesterday with Michael Orr. Well, that's the guy who recruited him, So he was, and Michael Orr gave a lot of, said a lot of good things about him. But Hugh Freeze is now the coach at Auburn, and he was at Liberty. He had his opportunity at Liberty, built himself back up after leaving Auburn, Ole Miss with a whole bunch of issues going on. Even a 10-1 season in 2020. Now he's back in the SEC, familiar territory. He's familiar with a lot of the ways things are done, even now with the transfer portal and NIL being what it is. And I'm just thinking that naming the quarterback for somewhere like Auburn, who can even, at their best in Alabama, not necessarily be on their game, has proven they can beat Alabama in the past. That's how we had Central Florida acting like they were national champs because Auburn did the deed.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why it may even have some relevance right there. And something that another topic we can get on to is what we've talked about several times over the past several weeks. Northwestern once again is showing up. This time over 1,000 people, approximately 1,000 people, but I believe it's over 1,000 people, sent a letter to pretty much defend the culture of the school. Now, they don't like the hazing that has been going on because, of course, they had to say that. But they're defending the culture of the school, saying it's not that bad, and they're putting it all on. Well, there's a lot of pressure on student athletes. They got to put in this much work here on the football field, baseball field, basketball court, or anywhere else, as much as they do in the classroom, because hey, most Northwestern student athletes are legitimately student athletes.
Yeah, my issue with that is if you weren't the victim, of course it wasn't too bad. But if you're the victim, you have a completely different feeling about it. So whatever. If those accusations are true, those 1,000 people can go to hell because they were there and they did nothing about it,
Yep,
and they're good with it. So yeah, they can go to hell.
yeah, former student athletes, so we know that they supposedly were in the same boat. You can't tell me that all of this stuff just happened and just begun, and that the people who are writing this petition or just signing this letter, to endorse what's going on culture-wise, you can't tell me that these guys, had never seen anything like that, or at least heard something like that at some point during the time they were there. If they were there in the last 5 years, even 10 years,
I mean
cultures
that
take time to come
it's
together.
like you and I, if we're on the same team, and you're getting hazed, but I'm not. Our experiences are totally different.
Yeah,
And then you come out years later, oh, the culture's bad, the culture's bad. I'm like, well, wasn't that bad? I mean, nothing happened to me, but it was terrible for you.
yeah. And that's what it seems like right now. So we already know there's a bunch of litigation going back and forth between former Northwestern student athletes and the internal investigation started by Northwestern themselves and everything under the sun. It's going to be long. It's going to be tenuous, but there's still going to, in my opinion, there's still going to be a lot of money coming out of this from Northwestern, the same way Michigan had to pay up when they had their issues. So, yeah, that's
Oh,
just
speaking of Harbaugh, he's not getting suspended after all, right? I thought I saw that.
yeah, initially they say he's not getting suspended. After all, it's like it's going back and forth. One minute he's getting suspended, next thing they're like, no, not
He
really.
only told a little white lie. We'll let him off.
Yeah, well, after Reese Davis said he's gonna be number one, so why not let him back in? Reese Davis, I told you he had
We
clout.
don't want to mess up their number one status
Yeah, we
early
don't
in the
want to make Reese
season.
Davis look bad. So how about that? Jim Harbaugh, I think for those first few games, we've sort of talked about it before. The first few games, Rutgers is in that mix, and that's the hardest team they have, in those first 4 games. So I mean, not that Rutgers is a pushover, but for Michigan and what Michigan has lined up offensively and defensively, I think most teams outside of Ohio State will be pushover games for them, and it should be. I think they beat Ohio State this year again, going for the trifecta. But yeah, I mean, Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines or not, how about suspend him for if they get to a championship game or get to a Big Ten championship game or something like that? They're not going to do that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that would be
college football doesn't
bogus.
do things like that.
We'll put it on the back burner to be determined, and then they bust it out later in the season. That would be bogus.
So, and it's a nice mix that we've had between these college players being college players ready for the football season and college athletes also getting in trouble because that's what college players do as well at Northwestern and everywhere else we know now because they got to graduate somewhere and they have to end up like Joe Mixon. Come on. You go from bad, get to the NFL, you get worse. Go to Joe Mixon. But he's been found not guilty for pulling a gun out on a woman during a fit of road rage back in, earlier this year.
I mean, what can I say? There obviously wasn't enough evidence. I mean, think about it. Why would a football player pull out a gun on a woman? So I mean, that sounded fishy from the jump.
You know what? I can't put anything past players these days. I mean, whether CTE may be an issue or whether just entitlement may be an issue or just being completely delusional in who you are is the issue, man.
Yeah, but he's not
Before,
guilty, so we can't
no, he's
say
not
anything.
guilty. I'm just saying, I mean, just putting it past players, not even him in particular, but players in general. The way when some player does something outrageous, there's no shock value as it used to be years ago. I remember first hearing about Lawrence Taylor having a drug issue. It really got you in the stomach. And I'm not even a Giants fan, just a Lawrence Taylor fan. You're like, wow, a drug. But now everybody is doing something. I mean, Ray Caruth killed his son's mom. And people were shocked at it, but they gotten over it. And we've seen other incidents of players hurting people and people hurting players. We've seen it over the years. And it just doesn't shock me anymore when these things happen with players. And unfortunately,
Unfortunately, yeah.
You get
It's good.
stigmatized. Now, if you're a player in which someone does something to you and you respond, And then people look at the player first because that's the known person, and you'd rather go after them and guilty until innocent, and in the court of public opinion, and it looks bad. But right here, the court, the legitimate court, says he's not guilty, so he's not guilty. But it's news going on right now. The Bengals could rest a little easy at the running back spot and chase that AFC Championship game and looking forward to a Super Bowl, knowing that they should have their full team intact.
Yeah, that will help them. That will that will help Joe Burrow, the run game, having the run game.
Absolutely.
He has weapons on the outside already, so they're going to be a balanced offense.
And sticking with the courtroom, I guess, not only for the players, but we're talking about even the fans. The fans could be just as bad as the players. The players are just robbing when they get big contracts. The fans decide they want to rob when they want more money. The Chiefs super fan decides he wants to rob banks in 4 different states for over $700,000, and he was caught. Finally caught, man. I mean, money laundering, all that stuff, man. I mean, absolute insanity. He's a well-known guy. He wears a wolf face, a wolf mask, and the fans obviously know him as the Chiefs super fan. Just caught robbing banks. I mean, this is the type of news that qualifies for sports news. This should be on the front page, not the back page.
Are we sure it's the same guy and not somebody just in a wolf mask and be impersonating the Chief super fan?
You know what? Maybe when they took that mugshot, they took the mask off.
Clay Thompson had a guy impersonating him. Remember that guy?
Clay Thompson?
Yeah.
No, I don't remember that.
No, he would go to the Warriors games in the Warriors uniform. What I didn't get is like he's not 6'6", 6'7", however tall Clay Thompson is. But people were like, he resembled Clay facially, but not physically. And he walked around signing autographs, got in the building. I'm like, how stupid are people, man?
That's funny news right there because he got in the building as a fraud, and Patrick Ewing couldn't even get in Madison Square Garden.
But what basketball player shows up in his uniform to the stadium, man? Come on. And security guards, pretty much you would think security guards work the same areas of the stadiums, usually, I think. And so I'm sure all the players know Joe the security guard or Jim the security guard. What happened when that guy showed up? Man, come on.
They wanted an autograph.
He caused a distraction and he snuck in. I don't know, but I don't know how that happened. That's ridiculous. Unless it was staged.
So over here with this super fan, man, I'm sure they took the mask off when he took his mugshot and kind of realized, hey, that might be the guy we're looking for. So now he's gone for I don't know how long. I haven't looked at any details, but do we really need to know? I mean, seriously. And, the Detroit Lions, they have issues at the wide receiver spot now with Jameson Williams, the Alabama product, the Ohio State, then Alabama product, first-round draft pick, 12 pick overall. Hasn't played yet, really. I mean, he's played, but he's coming back from injury. Now he's injured again. Not to mention, he was already going to miss some games this season because of gambling. I think 6 games. And now he has a hamstring injury. And while he's injured from the hamstring, he can't. And while he's under suspension, he can't be treated by the team. I didn't know that part.
Yeah, you mentioned the other day is Philadelphia 76ers, are they snake bitten? And I said, no, I think they just made a bunch of poor decisions.
Yeah.
But it could be the Detroit Lions are snake bitten. I mean, they can't win for losing, man.
Yeah. And, and for what they did last year, I mean, I know there's some optimism heading into this season, 2023, because Detroit did a lot better than people were expecting, last season. But with Jameson Williams, I mean, I remember watching him up in Atlanta, seeing his speed raw in person. And I was like, man, I mean, he just ran through that Miami Hurricanes defense as a wide receiver, not even a running back. He ran through them. I mean, Miami turned out not to be that great, but he did it throughout the entire year. He injured his knee in the national championship game. And they still picked him that early in the draft. That's how much they respected him. It reminded me of what Willis McGahee did. He played so well in the regular season, had one of these catastrophic injuries, and the Baltimore Ravens still took him in the first round because his talent was that glaring, and he kind of, made up for it, did pretty well. But, yeah, with Jameson Williams, now he has this hamstring issue, the hammy. I think the first one to coin that one was Ricky Henderson.
Those hammies can linger too, man. If he comes back a little bit too early, it could be a rough rookie season.
you don't trust yourself with a hammy. I've had a sore hamstring. I don't think I've ever pulled one. I had a Charlie horse on one. I've had a sore hamstring, but you don't trust it. You go out there and think as soon as you make a cut or as soon as you decide to accelerate, you think it's gonna just yank, and you're just nervous because of that. So that
Mhm.
psychological part and the physical part is a pain in the butt. And well, we have a pain in the butt here, but look at all of these things with him. You're missing games because now the injury, the previous injury, then you're missing games because you're suspended for the first 6 games from gambling. And now you have the hamstring injury. And while you're suspended, they can't treat you. The team cannot treat you while you're injured. I mean, while you're suspended. Craziness.
Yeah, that is craziness. It's like, can you guys refer somebody for me?
For real, man. What's going on here? I mean, I got some of these trial lawyers chasing after ambulances here. Maybe you might need one of them. But I tell you, man, and the injuries keep adding up in the NFL. We haven't played a real game yet. This is still preseason. Someone we did talk about yesterday in episode number 43, Russell Gage, wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as we expected. Well, we expected when they said he went down and we're hoping and praying. Well, he's out for the season. So he's going to need prayers for 2024 of ACL. And it was a non-contact drill because that's what we was wondering yesterday. Non-contact. He was backpedaling as a corner, as a wide receiver. Okay. Well, he was backpedaling and went down. And people saw him go down. They said when they was taking him off the field, he was crying. So he heard something. You know, he knew something was wrong as soon as he went down.
Yeah.
He felt it. He heard it. He knew it was a game changer.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Hopefully, he'll have his surgery and rehab and come back in good shape, stronger.
Yeah, man. You know, we can skip on to out of this football. I mean, we start off on a high note and things just getting injured and kind of bringing black cloud over the football games, man. So let's get into some NBA. Joel Embiid, I mean, he's not following the Sixers on social media anymore. The guy who started the process doesn't like the process. What's
He
going
doesn't
on with
he
Joel?
doesn't trust the process anymore. You know, if I'm Joel Embiid, my biggest issue would be they didn't get him enough help. You know where I stand on James Harden.
Yeah.
I don't want that dude anywhere near my team. I don't know why Embiid said he and James need more help after
You
Game
know
Seven.
James gone.
Um, I mean, when the guy drops 9 points in a pivotal Game 7, eh, he doesn't need help. He needs to step up and help out. But it just shows his state of mind as far as Joel Embiid removing Philly from his social media. Like I said, he doesn't trust the process. Seems that way, and he's got an excuse me. He's got another year. Maybe he's gonna play it out, or maybe he'll try and force a trade, just like he sees Harden doing.
Yeah, exactly. I
But
think
Maury, they said I'm Ben Williams, Ben Simmons a long time. So Embiid can demand a trade now. He might not get traded till February.
and this is the culture of now what is the NBA when players are forcing themselves out. I think James Harden has done it more than any other player over the past several years. And
Yeah,
teams are still willing to take him. They still believe
I
that he
don't
may be the answer
understand
to helping
why.
their team win. Now, helping your team win, what, more than the previous season? Definitely not going to a championship because he hasn't done that himself. I mean, he's done nothing but play with teams that did not go to championships or had a chance when you had three of the better players when he was even a little younger, playing with Durant and playing with Kyrie Irving. We thought this Brooklyn team was a guaranteed championship team. Regardless of Kevin Durant's shoe size, they didn't go with him where and Harden is just as much of a reason as anybody else, but I think he was the lower rung of the three guys.
Yeah, I don't know what moves Philly can make. I don't know their cap situation, but I think their best move is to get Harden out of there. They're not going to get much for him. I'm sure a lot of GMs are turned off by what he said. And then you look at his track record, they
Yep.
figure it's only a matter of time before he does it to us. So why would anybody give up any kind of value to get him? Um, and then you can't rely on him when it counts in the
Nope.
playoffs.
9 points.
So, what's the point of having him on your roster? But Maxi, he was coming along, he's stepping up, and maybe he takes another step up this year, more confidence. But is Maxi enough to help MB go to the finals?
Nope.
I don't think so. They need more than just Maxi to step up.
The East is too loaded. The
And
East,
then let's get to the final. Um, yeah, but if they did get there, I mean, because they had Boston on the ropes,
yeah, they
they
did.
just choked it away, and then Miami made it, and nobody expected Miami. They could have beaten Miami. I'm
Eight
not saying
seed.
they would. I'm not saying they would have, but if they beat Boston, chances are maybe they go to the finals. But then they get swept by the Nuggets. So MB needs more help. That would be my biggest gripe if I was him. He doesn't have enough help.
Yeah, he doesn't have enough help, but he doesn't. If he doesn't believe in the process anymore, he doesn't want to be there. And today's age with social media in particular, these players taking the team that they're on off of their social media or stop following them to kind of give a signal to the fans and a little bit to the organization. These guys are still obligated contractually with the
Yeah.
team, not necessarily to the fans, but they do that as a sign. We saw in football, Saquon Barkley did the same thing with the Giants. He stopped following them or did whatever he had done, and then he kind of comes back after getting less than $1 million raise, trying to make a point. He didn't get what he wanted, but this is what they're doing these days. Teams stop following their team just for fans to get a reaction, or just, I don't know, make the fans do the negotiating for them when they want to get out of a situation. I mean, MB, what would you be able to get as Philadelphia for MB? I mean, and who you're going to get it from? Because he's not just going making a unilateral move to another decent team. He wants to go to one that's set for a championship, and he's the final piece.
Yeah, I don't know. Because if you're trading for Embiid, you have championship aspirations,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't want to give up, you know,
Your future.
4 good players to get him because now you'll lack depth.
Yep.
Um, I don't know. Um, yeah, I'd have to give it some thought to come up with something, but right now I can't think of anything.
Yeah,
I
because
mean, I know who could use him because they need a big man. Uh, Golden
Golden
State
State.
Warriors,
Golden State. I was looking for them to
but
get one bowl, let alone
but
him.
but what are they giving up? You think Philly wants Chris Paul?
Man, I'm surprised Golden State wanted Chris Paul, man, after all this time.
Yeah,
But
I don't know.
so would you say right now MB is a top 5 player in the NBA?
Uh,
He may be 6.
so yeah, probably five, 6 for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of dogs in the NBA right now. I mean, just overall talent, and because of the style of NBA these days, and you look at the numbers, freakish numbers out there as well. Yeah, I can have
Yeah,
the NBA around.
it's weird though. I mean, me personally, like if I was drafting a top 10,
Mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't draft him top 5 or 6 though.
Oh, okay.
You
So,
know what I'm saying? I would just because to me the NBA is a guard dominated league, so I'm looking at 2 guards who can shoot and score.
so
Other
would you
than
take Giannis?
Jokic, excuse me.
Would you take Giannis?
Well, Giannis has got it done, so yeah, I take Giannis and Jokic.
Yeah.
They've gotten it done. So definitely, I take both of them ahead of Embiid.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, Embiid. I don't think you could go wrong with anybody in the top 5 anyway. If you wanted to start a team, it's just a matter how soon is it going to take you to get to where your goal is, because then you have to surround those same players with the quality that's going
I
to
mean,
get
but
to a championship.
even Embiid in that game 7, he didn't play well. Philly fans have to be disappointed. That's your MVP. He went out there. What he scored 12 points.
Yeah. Well, did he score 12 in the game 7? Because
I
I know
think
that
so.
James Harden scored 9. So I didn't know.
Yeah, I know Harden scored 9.
12.
It was maybe 12 or 14, but he was the
Either
third
way,
leading scorer. Like Maxey and Harris scored more than he did.
well,
And if you're the MVP of the league, you gotta lead the way. You can't and then cry about you need more help. No, man. You
I
should
think
have helped yourself.
I think you're right the first time. He's their MVP. Yeah, he is their MVP because he should have been the league's MVP. But hey, and another thing with the NBA, we were talking about. We mentioned it or at least before the show came on, the playing in season game, the in season tournament. What is the deal with this, man?
I don't know.
What does it really do? I mean, what are they trying to accomplish? Are they trying to get more fans? I mean, I think the fans are at an all time high as it is, man. They're putting a quality product out there.
I don't know if they're trying to get more fans, but I definitely believe they're trying to make the games mean something. Me, as big as a basketball fan as I am, I don't watch NBA usually until Christmas Day.
Yeah, that's when
I'll keep an eye on it. If Philly comes to play the Bulls or the Warriors come to town, a good team, I'll watch it. But I'm not living and dying with each game early in the season.
Yeah,
My focus is usually college. And
yeah.
like I said, until Christmas Day, we have the big matchups usually, and then after, that's when, you get the All-Star break, but usually teams start making that playoff push. So to me, the NBA season doesn't start until Christmas Day. So, and the in-season tournament is before Christmas. So that's why I say they're trying to make these games mean something, but they're making it mean something in perception to the fans, but is it going to mean anything to the players? Word is each player from the winning team will get 500,000. Well, if you're making 35 million a year,
For real.
what the hell is 500,000? You know what? My ankles hurt a little bit today. I'm a load manage. Playoffs, baby,
Yeah,
playoffs.
unbelievable. I mean, 500 grand, 500 grand. I mean, even if you have $35 million
I mean,
coming in.
if they want to crown the midseason champs and they get a trophy, and now you might be talking something legitimate for the players to play for. But you get 500,000 and you're already making so many millions.
Yeah, that's true.
Where's the incentive?
Yeah, they're just playing basketball. That's it, man. I don't know, man. Too much
And
of
then
a good thing.
even if some teams be like, yo, we want to be the first ones, let's go get it. We'll be the first ones, and maybe it doesn't work out and they don't have it next year. We'll be the only ones. But right, so they have something to celebrate. We're the first ones. We're the first ones to win the in-season tournament. But will the fans really care?
Nope. What? The first year is probably going to be the year when everybody does show up. A lot of times you get these new tweaks or even leagues that
And I
come
think
about.
they're talking neutral site games in Vegas and stuff like that. Man, why are they playing games, taking home games away from fans?
Yep, that's true.
That's ridiculous.
Well, and we'll find out even more about this because basketball does start with training camps next month, which is September, which is just a couple of weeks away. And so we'll be more than happy to talk some NBA basketball and see how these new teams and new players on new teams will do in their quest to try to get to a championship next June 2024. Come on, man. I mean, we got a long season ahead of us. A whole lot going on.
The NBA is doing all they can to get attention, man.
Yeah, and that's a good deal, though. You want to do that.
Yeah.
You want to keep the buzz going,
Yeah.
But
Baseball's in full swing, and we haven't even mentioned it until just
exactly. And that's why we haven't mentioned it until now. Tim Anderson, he's back in the news again, but his suspension has been lowered to 5 games from the 6 game it started off as. And I mean, hey, he's losing $77,000 because of the suspensions after his fight with Jose Ramirez about a week or two ago.
Yeah, he appealed it, and they dropped it 1 game. Big deal. He he sent out a press release apologizing to his teammates, the organization, the fans. He says he was told things by Indians players, Guardians players. He's not going to repeat it, but it still just doesn't justify his actions.
Nah.
He says they can say whatever they want, but I respect the game just as much as anyone. And you know how I feel. I don't believe he started that fight. He didn't have to square up, but I don't know what was said. Ramirez did throw his hand up against his junk and got up and put his finger in his face. To me, it makes no sense why Tim got more games than Ramirez.
Yeah, that's crazy because he was the one who got tagged and he was the one who got ridiculed because he got tagged. And then Ramirez still continued to talk afterwards. saying that he disrespects baseball and all the other. I mean, shoot, who really respects it as much as they used to, anyways? You know what I mean? There's so many unwritten rules that people aren't really following. I
Yeah,
mean, you
with
see the
all the bat flips and you know
did you see
the
yesterday up there with,
no,
the game winner by the Cubs? They running around the freaking running around the park like they won the World Series, man. Craziness.
when you're known as the lovable losers, you gotta celebrate whenever you can.
I bet, man. But I was like, dog, I was like, man, the crowd acted like it was a playoff game. I was like, come on, man. You know, this is one of those.
That's because the White Sox own they have a better record in head to head competition. So they them winning 3 games this year was like their World Series. They got the championship, the Crosstown Cup, and that's
Yeah,
what they're celebrating. They got the cup.
and they acted like it
Wow,
too. I
good
mean,
for you.
I saw the fans,
My
but
my,
come on.
my thing is they've been whiners their entire lives, you know, and they act like their team is the Yankees when
Yo,
they're known as lovable losers. You know, losers.
yeah,
So why are you talking like your team has this great tradition? It doesn't. But you won your World Series in 2016. Stop being little sissy ass whiners, man. Grow up. Be happy. Damn, you got your world championship after 108 years.
yep. And then that walk off is they acted like that was the other World Series, man. But it wasn't. It just struck me, and I wasn't even really paying attention to it until I saw a clip of it, and I'm like, yo, what's the excitement about? And I'm looking at, wait a minute, it's the White Sox and the Cubs. What's this saying? And then they're in the same city.
Yeah,
Unless
they beat a fourth place team last night. Wow, great for you.
it's amped up because it's in the same city. Like the Yankees playing the Mets Subway Series, the same thing is amped up. But those two got a little bit more juice going on because of what had
No,
happened.
it's just funny because the Cub fans were like, I can't believe we're losing 3-0 to the White Sox. Whiny ass.
But anyway, on that, do you have a nice hit list for us this afternoon or this evening before we close this out?
I mean, I got something to get off my chest, but I don't have them in my crosshairs. It's just I'm kind of fed up with uh, with sports fans, man. You got fans posting top 10 lists, you know, in different sports. They might be like most overrated, and they have Lawrence Taylor, Jerry Rice on the list. Are you just looking for attention? Why that makes no sense. You know, a top 10 list with Lawrence Taylor and Jerry Rice, we're talking about greatest of all time. Overrated, that that's just an asinine take. And to me, it's just a fan looking for attention. We have LeBron fans saying Jordan couldn't have taken the Cleveland Cavaliers to the playoffs. When LeBron got there, he didn't take the Cavaliers to the playoffs. What is your point? What are you trying to say? Jordan, he broke his foot in his second season, came back. They were limiting his numbers or his minutes, but he wanted to make the playoffs, and he got them back into the playoff picture. They got into the playoffs. They got swept by the Celtics, but they only made it because he forced them to do it. They removed the restrictions, the minutes restriction, because he was all about getting to the playoffs. And when LeBron got hurt with the Lakers and he came back and activated playoff mode, did they make the playoffs? No, they didn't. They got worse. And he had Anthony Davis on the team. Jordan had crackheads on his team. Quinn Daly. I mean, come on, Enos Wally, guys who I'll say their names and you'd be like, who? Exactly. I mean, come on. We got people saying Pat Mahomes is overrated. He's only been in the league, 6 years, and he has 2 championships, been to 3 Super Bowls, and he's overrated. Come on, man. At the end of his career, he's going to be talked about with the greatest players of all time. What are people thinking? The only thing I can think of is that they're low life losers who need attention.
You're correct. You may just be right because these people, I mean, come on now, especially with the Lawrence Taylor deal. I mean, Jerry Rice, those two, forget about it. If there were ever a Mount Rushmore of football, those guys are on it. 1 and 2, 2-1. I think Lawrence Taylor is the number one best player of all time, period, man. The things that he had done on the football field, the way he's changed the game for even today. I mean, I think you said J.J. Watt was on the list as well. I think you might have mentioned J.J.
Yeah,
Watt yesterday.
yes. Lawrence Taylor was 1, Rice was 3, J.J. Watt was 5. I don't even remember the other 2.
Man, once you lose your memory, you black out after hearing those three. I mean, come on, man. When J.J. Watt was at his best,
I
I'm thinking
I,
about
po-
Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White when they're looking at
I
him play.
posted somebody's top 5 on the Facebook page today, and I asked who comes up with this crap. Jokic wasn't on top 5. Okay, if you don't want to agree that he's number 1, he's at least number 2 or 3. But
See,
top 5, they had John Morant in top 5.
these are agendas, man. You can see through the crap. You know what the agendas are. It's ridiculous. No European player is going to be on their agenda. So whether it's Luka or whether it's Jokic, they're not going to be on there. They're going to have all of these other unproven players or players who just put up numbers and still don't do anything for their teams. They'll have them on there. And it's ridiculous how it is. If you love basketball, like you claim you love basketball, if you want to just rank basketball players, be honest with yourself. Be honest to the game. Be respectful to the game, and put out the right players. I mean, it's that simple. You're not losing or gaining anything by doing it. But yet these people have their own personal favorites, which go against anything. Have your own list then. But when you put your list out there and it looks that ridiculous,
I mean,
you're going to have people that's going to be upset about it.
if you say, here's my favorite, okay, nobody can dispute that. Those are your favorites.
Yep.
But that's totally different when you say, this is my starting 5. Well, your starting 5 is going to get run off the court, fool.
Run off the court by the refs. Come on, man. But anyway, that's what we have for today. And these are the people we're dealing with. These are the kinds of people we need on
in
the
our
live stream.
neighborhood.
These are the people we need.
These are the people in our neighborhood.
Unbelievable, man. Come into this conversation when we have it, whether we're doing a live stream or whether you want to go to the comments themselves and say something, leave a message, give us some show ideas. Give us an idea what you're thinking. And that way we can have this thing continue to go around. But this is our Friday, which is Thursday, 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. We're talking sports and having a conversation. The Sports Bag Bros, episode number 44. Look at that. That's Reggie Jackson, 44. The podcast coming to an end. We'll catch you after this weekend because
have a good weekend, everybody. See you Monday.
See you Monday.